So we found very few women who actually are independent. So we found much more women who are somewhat codependent or fully dependent on other people when it comes to their money decisions. And therefore, we thought it is so important that you as a woman become aware of your lived context and your socio-economic context. And if you come to sovereignty here, and if you take your decision in an awareness while you are codependent or fully dependent, that is better than not thinking about that when you take decisions about your money.
Welcome to the Lilith Podcast. I am Caroline Myriel, your host, and invite you to join me to explore what sovereignty means for us as modern women, just like you and me. Because we live in unprecedented times that require us to step up together and connect back with our innate sovereignty. The Lilith myth is a story of a woman who stepped into her sovereignty and freedom. She represents an energy within us women that aims for right relationship and equality. And that Lilith energy is on the rise. In the Lilith podcast, we harness the Lilith energy to support us to become aligned, sovereign, and free from our past conditioning to break through to our highest level of autonomy. In the first season of the Lilith podcast, I have in-depth conversations with business anthropologist Lilith Wacker about the money truth of women. Lilith conducted a study called Increasing the Financial Equality of Women is Hard for a Reason on behalf of Accenture Song, because she wanted to get women right. You will learn a lot about yourself, about your conscious and unconscious money behaviors, and hopefully it'll be worthwhile listening for you. If we talk about sovereignty, we cannot not talk about the money truth of women. And I'm very delighted that I have Lilith in this first season with me because she led a study on exactly that topic. Welcome, Lilith, to the Lilith podcast, and we'll unpack what the Lilith podcast has to do with you or not.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here and to be in this first season of your podcast, and funnily enough, also having the same name.
Yes, and it's a true coincidence, if you want to believe in it or not, because when I had the idea of the Lilith podcast, I had no idea that you would be the first person I speak about. And when we connected and you told me that you have led that study that we're going to dive deep into in this season 1, I knew, okay, that's going to be the first season and the material and the content that we will cover. And but before, of course, we dive into the study and tell everyone on this podcast listening in, every woman or every man, whoever wants to dig deeper into the money truth of women. Let's talk a bit about you. Tell us, who are you and what are you doing?
Yeah. So my name is Lilith and I live in Germany, and I am a mother of a currently 14-year-old boy. I also take care of my 90-year-old father, who I relocated from my hometown in the city where I live now into an elderly home. I take care of him partly, obviously, and I work for Accenture Song. And in Accenture Song, I do business anthropology. And what is that? So my special matter expertise is ethnographic research. That means that I study people in their everyday lives in order to understand how they perceive their world and their everyday life, and how they make sense of the world. And I discover human insights, and those insights are being used to inform strategy and innovation.
Well, honestly, whenever you talk about business anthropology, ethnography, I am super intrigued because I find it super fascinating to dig deeper under the surface of our everyday life's behavior. And because everyday life behavior can have short, mid, and long-term consequences in all kinds of areas. And I really love that you translate that then into what does that mean, what you're observing. And obviously, the money truth of women is a very interesting and intriguing topic, especially because it's linked in so many areas of our life. And I'm super keen on understanding how you conducted that study. But before we do that, just let me know how you got your name, because Lilith is obviously a very special name. And I know there's an interesting story behind that too.
Yeah, so how did I get that name? So actually, my mom got that name first. So her name was Lilith as well. But the problem was that she was born in 1940 in Germany, and my grandfather, he wanted to give her that name because he read Goethe's Faust and was a big fan of that name. But it is a Jewish name, and the neighbors then went to my grandfather and said, like, it's a really bad idea to give your daughter a Jewish name in these days. So she was named differently and got like a proper German name, but everyone would call her Lilith. And when she got pregnant with me, it was pretty clear for everyone that I should get that name also as a remembrance and memory of those times. And therefore, in our family, this name is quite symbolic for, okay, my mom got the freedom to give me that name or whatever name she wanted to, without any difficulties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I feel it's because the Lilith energy is kind of rising right now. So it's interesting where early seeds have been planted. This name Lilith didn't get lost, although it might have been at some times a bit hidden from the surface. But then now there's this big resurgence of not only that name, but of the energy of Lilith. And I remember you telling me around early this year, around World Women's Day, that you had, I would call it Lilith moment, where you were presenting some data around women and the truth of women before we dive into anything related to money. And would you mind just sharing that moment, what that Lilith moment looked like for you?
Yeah. So within Accenture Song, I would say we are super active on International Women's Day, and we strive for equality and diversity and all those values, which is wonderful. And we always have like these internal but also external events around International Women's Day. And once in a while, I get asked to still talk about the study that I led within Accenture Song around the money truth of women. And I do that. So we conducted the study already in 2019. And since I've been giving this talk each and every year, and I start this talk with a slide around numbers. And it was now the fifth or fourth year where I had to actualize those numbers. And I was a little bit like, okay, I have to do my research now. And those numbers are about how much more unpaid care work do women do. It's currently around 9.8% more, which I don't know how much that is. It's around 2 hours or so. And UN Women, they anticipate that this will only be 9.5% in 2050. And I was like, what is this? Why don't the numbers change over all those years? Even though we are talking about that, we are having those, we're coming together, we try to activate that theme, but the numbers don't change. And same for gender pay gap, right? In ASG, Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, we have a gender pay gap of 18%, and that didn't change in the past 4 years. And also, women are not as likely to invest into the stock market as men. That obviously has an effect on the pension gap in the future for women. And it was the 4th year, and I was sitting in front of those numbers, and I was like, okay, this really can't be. Why is it that those numbers don't change? And I had this, and you might call this now a Lilith moment. Maybe it is. So let's introduce it like that. It was a mixture out of, how can it be that we have the knowledge but nothing changes? And I think this is a typical feeling that activists might have, right? We know from facts and numbers what is going to happen, but nothing is changing. And yeah, it's a mixture out of anger and frustration, and also a little bit of helplessness and vulnerability, because obviously those questions come up. What can we do about that? How can we change those numbers?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I definitely, when I hear those numbers, I get a Lilith moment, even if it's not my name, like I think we have our daily life and our truth around it. And we are those numbers. We contribute to those numbers in a broader sense, because those numbers are an aggregate of every woman walking around on this earth. Or at least in your study in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, you have some representation. And that all goes into those numbers. And then all those numbers result in pension gaps and all unfavorable gaps that women can have. And of course, that's something to pause and say, hang on, what can we do about it? And obviously, it's a very big context, and it might make us feel like, okay, what can I do about it, right? Because it's just numbers, and I'm living my life here in the here and now, and go to work and do what I can to contribute to my family and generate income. So all those daily things that are related more or less to money get into those numbers. So what would we tell women who feel like, okay, I'm too small in order to conquer such a big problem? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I'm also one of those women, right? Because I work 80% and 20% I spend time with my father, for example, right? So the unpaid care work is like a big topic in my life as well. And I think the lived realities and the contexts of women are quite similar. And what I would like to come to in the near future is that we as women get an awareness of those things, because we also found that the awareness is not quite high, because it feels so normal to women to do this unpaid care work. It is deeply connected to the gender roles, and not only women are suffering from that, not only financially, but also men do suffer from that, because theoretically there are much more men in the meanwhile who want to take much more, or want to have much more time with their children, for example, but like their employees are not allowing for that. So I would wish us to come into consciousness and awareness around those topics that are so everyday life.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're here for, right? We're gonna dig really deep into our money truth of women. And what I love is that in the study you led, you wanted to get women right. So let's have a look into the study so everybody understands, who's listening to us, how important it is to really think and be aware of those dynamics that in everyday life might be hidden under the surface. But in the here and now, we can do something about it in the daily life as well. And I know, at least since I have read the study you led and digested all those insights, which I found fascinating, and that's why we're talking, I have made different choices around money, around how I spend my time. I do things so much more consciously that they have had already a ripple effect on others. And I'm kind of, whoa, once we start thinking about it and talking about it, and we'll have a workbook for you, if you're listening, to really bring those things to surface. We invite you. That will be published as of the next episode. But just saying that it's really worth listening in and seeing, where do you have Lilith moments? Because those Lilith moments are very valuable indicators for us, where actually we can do things differently and we can do our part into those bigger numbers, but most importantly, where you and me can really change something for the positive by bringing those things up and bringing them to the forefront and make different choices. And also, we'll cover that in the next episode, where we talk about how women perceive wealth and how women make their money decisions. And that's all based on the findings of the study that you led. So let's have a deep dive. Let's have a look at, what did you do in the study as a business anthropologist, and what was the scope of the study?
Yeah. So I'd like to start why we conducted the study, or why we thought the study was needed, right? Because obviously in strategy and innovation, clients are often ask us, okay, what should we do about female finances and female banking, right? And we found that the answer to why is it that women do not invest as much as men, for example, wasn't really answered. And it was like, yeah, maybe they are not that risk friendly or search for more security. And we were like, well, that can't be it. So we thought, okay, what about studying the phenomenon of money into women's life and really dig deep into their everyday lives? And so we started framing this study, and we talked to 18 women in Austria, Switzerland, and Germany. We had like over 3 hours face-to-face conversations and observation. We had an age range between 20 and 65, so a quite wide age range. We recruited for diverse family and income situations to really get the broadest range of women in those 3 countries.
So you didn't just interview the ones who are far above the average level of income or far below. It's really an even distribution, let's say, so that you can kind of like, in those 3 countries, get a good overview over what's the situation, how do women think around money, what are their truths, what's their context in which they make those decisions and act.
Exactly. And you just named it. The important thing is to understand their lived context around money and how they take their decisions according to that context, and not understand them according to demographics, like how old they are or how much income they have, right? We wanted to break that apart and really reassess the familiar, that's how we call this, on how they perceive money and how they take their decisions around money according to their lived context.
It reminds me a bit of an onion, because you kind of like, you could go just see the onion and say, okay, that's an onion. Okay, there's nothing to really look into it. And then you peeled all those layers and see, okay, where did this onion grow up or grow? How was it watered? How was it conditioned, let's say? So, and that's the layers that I'm interested in to dig deeper in the coming episodes with you, because they have a lot to do with sovereignty and how we make those decisions in everyday life that help us to become more financially independent, which is interesting because the women I work with, we sometimes do some sort of map, and of course finances come up, and I have noticed a pattern that many women say they want to be financially independent. And then I read in the study report that actually you make a distinction between independence and autonomy. So, yeah, just talk about that. Talk us through what you found, because I think we really need to be aware of that as women.
Yeah, it is really about a change of perspective, because if you think about the word independence, so what do you do when you are independent? You can do whatever you want without asking anybody else. But we found in our study that we didn't find that in our study. We know that humans are social beings. We interact with each other, first of all. And money falls into this interaction as a phenomenon. So when we talked with women about money and their decision making, how women take their decisions, if they want to save money, if they want to spend money, whatever, and they told us stories where other people were involved into that decision making that affected money directly or indirectly. For example, changing jobs, moving in with a spouse, those kind of lived context. And when you listen to the stories, it becomes pretty obvious that decision making is never made just on their individual being. It is made also by thinking other people in that decision making. And over that, we found in the synthesis, like synthesizing what kind of stories we have been hearing, is that many people are actually not financially independent. It's just very few of us who can say, okay, I'm super independent and I also take my money decisions independently. It was always about, okay, yeah, but what would my parents think about that decision when I start another education? What would my husband think if I wanted to start to work again, right? All those decision makings that are indirectly bound to money are not being made completely independent. So we found very few women who actually are actually independent. So we found much more women who are somewhat codependent or fully dependent on other people when it comes to their money decisions. And therefore, we thought it is so important that you as a woman become aware of your lived context and your socio-economic context and how you take your decisions in your lived context. And if you come to sovereignty here, and if you take your decision in an awareness while you are codependent or fully dependent, that is better than not thinking about that when you take decisions about your money at all.
Yeah, I have another example. Just recently, I talked with a woman and she wanted to change her job, but she was thinking, okay, what does that mean for my family and my kids? Because I need that income to contribute. And like for her, it would have been a big risk to take to change job in order to fulfill her career without thinking of what does that mean for my family and do I allow myself to do that. But that's already what we mean by money decisions. It's not just how much money am I going to spend. We also mean money decisions. Can she take that decision autonomously or not? And that's what you mean also with being codependent, or not even us being codependent, but somebody else codependent on us, like children.
Yes.
So in both ways. So whoever listens, I'm really curious. And if you listen to that on Substack, maybe share with us in the comments below, what is your lived context? Do you feel you're fully independent, or you're codependent, or fully dependent? And there's no judgment about it. It's just the reality and life. And it's so important to be aware of, okay, where on that range am I sitting? Because we might just think, okay, I want to be financially independent. But actually, the truth is And that's also a money truth. We are not. We can make decision in those living context, where we move towards, I think you called it autonomy instead, right? So what's the difference? How would you define autonomy then?
Autonomy, I would define it as you are aware of the decision that you make around your job, about moving, about taking on a further education, and the consequences that those decisions have on your money in the future, while maybe living in a situation where your spouse or your parents support you financially. Just being aware and taking a decision in that awareness and projecting that also into what does that mean for me into the future.
Yeah, because that is then relevant for the pension and for the longer term decisions that we need to take, and we sometimes forget because we're so much in the here and now dealing with everyday life that we don't actually extrapolate into the future, and it feels so normal to us to act as we act in our social context.
Yes, and you just gave the other example about the independence. Even if you have a lot of money on your bank account and you could move to another city to get a better job or a more interesting job, but the decision making becomes challenging because you maybe don't want to resettle your children into a new city and into a new school.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yeah.
have to think about what price in a bigger sense do I want to pay, and who is paying that price for my better job, for that better salary, or for that nicer city. And this is not an independent decision. So it's just a change of perspective and a matter of raised awareness and consciousness of your socio-economic context.
Yeah. So you're talking about decisions. What decisions am I going to take? And in the next episode, we're going to talk and deep dive into how we as women make our money decisions. What are the 3 parameters? We're not going to reveal them just yet because we really wanted to bring the point home and invite you to think about, okay, are you feeling independent, codependent, or fully dependent in your current situation? Because that sets the ground. And just maybe think about, where do you have some Lilith moments from time to time because of that state that you're in, or that socioeconomic situation you're in. And anything else from your side, Lilith? Because I know you have so many things to say about the money truth of women, and we're going to get to the other layers of the onion. But in a nutshell, what would be your message today to all the women out there who are listening to us today?
So my message would be, let the idea or the concept of a Lilith moment settle in your life, and become a little bit aware of that. And if you feel this gut feeling of, or something is wrong, something is off, I'm getting a little bit angry here, try to translate that situation into, is that like an indirect money decision? Do I make a good deal here as a woman in my lived context or not? Without judging anything, just becoming aware of what your lived situation is right now and what you maybe might want to change into the future.
Yeah, that's really great. If we can all do that till the next episode, then we're super prepared to dive deeper into also how we perceive wealth and how we make those decisions. And yeah, just work towards more sovereignty in our lives, every woman at a time. And we'll change those numbers together when we all do that. Thank you so much, Lilith. I could take so much time to talk with you, and we do. And I'm very, very sure that everyone listening will take a lot out of it. If you have listened to this episode and you want to make sure that you also get the notification for the next episode directly into your mailbox, just make sure you go to the show notes, you click on that link, and you just sign up for the Lilith podcast so that you can listen to what is the next layer of the onion that we're going to peel and how you can benefit from all the insights from the study. Thank you so much, Lilith.
Thank you for having me and asking me all those questions to unwind this phenomenon.